It has been called one of the most notorious crimes in Arkansas history. 3 8-year-old boys murdered in West Memphis. 16 years after the crime, the case is still being appealed. And as Heather Crawford reports tonight, the man sentenced to die for the killings believes he will ultimately be set free.
You're in solitary confinement 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
This is where Damien Echols has spent more than a decade and a half, on Arkansas's death row in Grady, Arkansas.
You're always in pain. You know, there's physical pain, there's emotional pain, there's mental pain. It's just a absolutely horrendous environment. They're basically just trying to keep you alive long enough to kill you.
Known around the world as part of the West Memphis Three, Echols was sentenced to die in 1994 for the murders of Christopher Byers, Michael Moore, and Stephen Branch. The victims, just 8 years old, were found hog-tied and naked in a ditch in West Memphis, Arkansas. Jason Baldwin and Jesse Miskelly were also convicted of the brutal crimes, both sentenced to life in prison. They, like Echols, are appealing their conviction. Last November, I visited death row for the first time and sat down with Echols.
Ever since the minute that I was arrested 15 years ago, I've tried to tell them that I did not do this, and they just weren't interested in listening. You know, they say, well, that's what everybody says. And that's why, for me, the DNA evidence is so important now, is because finally there's concrete forensic evidence that I can point to and say, look, I told you.
In a nearly 200-page motion, Echols' attorneys lay out what they say is overwhelming and irrefutable scientific evidence that their client is innocent. The evidence? DNA test results they say fails to link Echols and the other defendants to the crime scene, but does, according to Echols' lawyers, link Terry Hobbs, the stepfather of Stephen Branch. Echols' defense team says a hair matching one from Hobbs was found in the knot on the cord of one of the victims, and another hair at the crime scene matched a man who Hobbs was with the day of the crimes. That motion was filed 2 years ago, and over the past year there have been several new developments in the case. Echols is now awaiting arguments before the Arkansas Supreme Court, and he agreed to sit down with me again.
Why do you think you deserve a new trial?
Because I didn't do it. Because the person who murdered those children is still walking out there on the streets. And in a very indirect way, this is even about more than me, because if they're allowed to get away with doing this time, then they'll do it again. And the next time they do it, you know, it could be your husband, your brother, your son.
In April, supporters of the West Memphis Three announced that renowned former NYPD homicide detective J. Salpeter had joined the effort to help free Echols, Baldwin, and Miskelly. One of the first things he did was set up a confidential tip line seeking new information. 5 months later, 3 women who called that tip line gave sworn affidavits about information they claimed to have, but never told authorities because they were never questioned. The mother, Deborah Moyer, and her 2 daughters, Jamie Ballard and Brady Williams, say they saw Terry Hobbs, who was their neighbor at the time, hollering at the 3 8-year-old boys and telling them to come over to his house the night they disappeared.
I think it's extremely significant due to things like Terry Hobbs has always said that he never saw the children at all that day. He said he never saw them, period. And now here we have 3 people who said not only did he see them, but they witnessed him calling them, all 3 of them, to his house within something like an hour, maybe 2 hours of the time they were murdered.
When I called Hobbs to get his response, he referred me to his attorney. In a written statement, that attorney says, quote, "The affidavits prove nothing. This is the latest lie put forward by Dennis Reardon and the Damien Echols defense team." Hobbs is suing Dixie Chicks lead singer Natalie Maines in civil court for defamation for comments she posted on her website and made during a 2007 rally to free the West Memphis Three at the state capitol. As part of the case, he was deposed in July, and KATV has obtained comments he made under oath.
Did you see Stevie at all that day, May the 5th?
No, I did not.
Did you see any of the 3 boys that day?
No, I did not.
While Echols believes the evidence points at Hobbs, he says he doesn't want to wrongly accuse anyone.
Well, no, I don't want to point the finger at anybody because of what's been done to me, and I don't want to be guilty of doing the same thing to somebody else, but you know, they keep trying to come up with ways to say it was transference or something like that. And the thing about that is, first, Terry Hobbs' DNA wasn't found on his child. It was found on one of the other boys.
He admits that for years in the court of public opinion, before Hobbs' name was ever mentioned, many believed the father of another victim may have been involved.
And the DNA comes back, and it shows that, you know, he didn't have anything to do with it, that it's actually these two other guys whose DNA were found at the crime scene. So I think that is a huge, huge deal. But at the state we're at right now, you just have a lot of people who are fighting really hard to keep it from being heard, to keep it from getting out, and who don't want it looked at.
Despite spending more than a decade and a half here on death row, Echols is confident he will ultimately get a new trial.
I'm absolutely positive that, you know, that these people aren't going to be allowed to get away with this. That I don't believe that the higher courts, you know, the federal court systems are just going to sit on their hands.
And Echols has some new supporters trying to make that happen. In September, the Center on Wrongful Convictions at Northwestern University School of Law and the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers filed a brief with the Arkansas Supreme Court asking the justices to grant Echols a new trial. Echols says he just wants the court to look at the evidence.
And if they look at the evidence, what will they see?
They'll see that there is absolutely nothing connecting me to this crime whatsoever, that all the evidence that we do have, the forensic evidence, the expert testimony, the eyewitnesses, everything points to someone else.
Now, last week, Attorney General Dustin McDaniel filed this brief explaining why the state believes Echols does not deserve a new trial. The document says Echols' testing results are inconclusive as to his claim of actual innocence under Arkansas law. Echols' case is now in the hands of the state Supreme Court. Meanwhile, the trial judge, David Burnett, is expected to decide by the end of the year whether Baldwin and Miss Kelly will be granted new trials. Heather Crawford, Channel 7.